What if the moment you've been waiting for your entire life finally came true? But instead of joy, it brought confusion, fear, and a sense of doom. Imagine this. You've prayed, waited, and suffered in silence for 15 long years. You've smiled through baby showers, congratulated friends, and sat quietly during sermons that told you to be patient. And then one night, your partner tells you they're pregnant. You want to celebrate. You want to believe it's the miracle you've begged for. But you know it's not yours. You know because deep down you've hidden a truth, a secret that makes this moment impossible. So what do? Do you smile and pretend? Do you ask the question that might end everything? Or do you stay quiet and start planning something darker? Kayla and Richard Morrow weren't just successful, they were admired. She was the senior warden at Eastwood Correctional Facility, known for her calm authority and no-nonsense approach. Staff respected her. Inmates didn't mess with her, and administration saw her as a pillar of order. Richard, on the other hand, was a courtroom star, a high-profile defense attorney who hadn't lost a case in nearly 5 years. Charming, calculated, and always 3 steps ahead, Richard was the kind of man who could convince a jury before opening arguments were even done. They lived in a spacious, 2-story brick home in a gated neighborhood just outside Baton Rouge. Their neighbors waved. Church members clapped for their anniversary. Their Facebook photos looked like stock images for love and success. But behind all that, there was a silence that never quite left their home. It wasn't the kind of silence that follows a fight. It was the kind that grows slowly, between unspoken disappointments and years of emotional withdrawal. For 15 years, Kayla tried to become a mother. She tracked ovulation, underwent hormone treatments, prayed through fasting, and even joined a support group for women dealing with unexplained infertility. Each year brought a new hope, and each year that hope was shattered. Richard never seemed bothered. He was too busy for tests, too tired for appointments. He showed up once, just once, in 2019 at her insistence. The clinic was run by his longtime friend, Dr. Anthony Keene. After that, nothing else was said. The results? Both of you are healthy, Keene had told Kayla. Just have faith. She clung to those words like a raft in a storm. But inside, her questions grew. Why didn't Richard want to try again? Why did he flinch every time she brought up adoption or IVF? And why did he shut down every conversation with scripture and silence? Kayla began to wonder if the real problem wasn't medical. It was personal. And the man who claimed to love her might have been hiding the one truth she needed the most. Kayla kept trying, kept hoping, kept praying. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As much as she wanted to believe her husband's reassurance, his constant avoidance gnawed at her. She began revisiting old memories, moments that once seemed small. His change in tone when children came up, how he shut down every time she mentioned IVF, the way he never volunteered to attend appointments unless she insisted. In spring of 2022, Kayla confronted Keene privately. She asked to see her full file, asked if there was something she missed. He told her again that everything looked fine. But when she asked specifically about Richard's sample, there was a pause. Then he simply said, "You both are fine." But his tone didn't sit right. That night, Kayla stared at the ceiling in bed while Richard slept beside her. Her body was tired. Her spirit was tired. But most of all, she was tired of pretending everything was okay. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't argue. She just existed, going through the motions. The woman who once fought for hope had become numb. Then came the day she met Marlon Tate, an inmate transferred from a state facility. Younger, quietly observant, always watching but never with disrespect. Kayla didn't notice him at first, but he noticed her. Started with a joke, then another, then glances that lasted longer than they should. He called her by name instead of title, listened when she spoke, noticed her pain. She told herself it was nothing, that it wouldn't go further. But silence has a way of creating space for bad decisions. And that space was growing one shift at a time. It was a rainy Thursday in late September when it happened. The storm outside had knocked out the facility's power. The backup generators kicked in, but not immediately. For 24 minutes, parts of Eastwood Correctional Facility went dark. Cameras glitched. Doors lagged. For a brief window, the watchful eye of the system blinked. Kayla was on rounds when she passed the library wing. And there he was, Marlon, standing there, as if waiting. She hesitated, said nothing, and neither did he. But silence has its own language. She stepped inside. The hallway behind her flickered. The room was warm, heavy with the scent of paper and stillness. It didn't take long. What happened wasn't romantic. It wasn't planned. But it wasn't stopped. It lasted minutes. But the weight of it would stay with her far longer. She walked away that night with a head full of noise and a heart she couldn't name. And for the first time in years, she felt something. Not love. Not relief. But certainty. She whispered to herself in the staff restroom mirror, "If it happens, then I'll know." She didn't mean to get pregnant. But part of her wanted the question answered once and for all. And 9 weeks later, she had her answer. The test came back positive. Kayla sat in the bathroom for almost an hour, staring at 2 pink lines she never thought she'd see. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was eerily calm. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just stared. This wasn't supposed to happen, not like this. Part of her had wanted clarity, a final answer. Now she had it. But with it came a new weight she wasn't ready for. She knew this child couldn't be Richard's. Not medically, not biologically. But after everything, the silence, the distance, the years of waiting, she also knew she couldn't let go of what this meant to her. She was going to be a mother, and that was something she had stopped believing would ever happen. That evening, she cooked his favorite meal: herb-crusted salmon, garlic mash, soft rolls, candlelight. She placed the ultrasound photo in a folded card on his plate. When Richard came home, she didn't say a word. She just pointed. He picked up the card, opened it slowly, and stared at the photo. There was a long silence. Then, he stepped forward, wrapped his arms around her, and whispered, "We did it." She melted into his embrace, unsure if she believed him, but needing, just for a moment, to feel the warmth of the lie. He didn't ask questions. Not how, not when, not who. And that, more than anything, frightened her. The twins were born just after dawn on a foggy January morning. 2 boys, perfectly healthy. They named them Micah and Miles. Kayla cried the moment she held them. Not out of guilt, not out of shame, but out of a love so fierce, she hadn't known her heart could hold it. Richard arrived 10 minutes later. He brought flowers, balloons, a soft blue blanket embroidered with their names. He kissed her forehead and told her she was amazing. He smiled for photos. He made small talk with nurses. He held the babies like they were his. But inside, he was already unraveling. That afternoon, while Kayla napped, Richard slipped into the hallway and made a call. He had saved the cord blood during delivery and had it tested through Keen's lab. 3 days later, the results came back. 0% paternal match. Richard stared at the email without blinking. His breath slowed. His hands clenched. He didn't tell Kayla. Instead, he came home each night and played the part. Feeding, rocking, singing. He smiled. But inside, something was shifting. A storm was forming. And it was only a matter of time before it broke. The silence in their home grew louder after the twins were born. Richard became more present, helping with feedings, diaper changes, even humming lullabies, but Kayla could feel the distance growing. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cold. He was still, the kind of still that felt rehearsed. One night, 3 weeks after the twins arrived, Kayla came downstairs to find dinner already on the table. The lights were low. A single candle flickered between their plates. She smiled nervously. As she approached, she saw it. A white envelope, her name written on it. He motioned for her to sit, said nothing. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was the paternity report. She looked up at him, her face frozen. "I can explain," she whispered, tears already forming. He didn't respond. She placed the envelope down and reached for him, but he backed away slightly. "I needed to know if it was me," she said. It wasn't about him. It was about the truth. He stared at her for a long time, his jaw clenched. then relaxed. Finally, he stood, took his plate, and carried it to the sink. Kayla sat there, alone, in the soft candlelight, as steam rose from untouched food and the room filled with a silence so thick it suffocated. Richard didn't yell. He didn't accuse. But something in him had broken, and she knew it. The night of February 17th was unusually cold in Baton Rouge. A frost advisory had been issued, and most homes in the neighborhood had lights off by 10 p.m. But at 11:25 Rosemont Drive, one man was wide awake. Richard Morrow stood in the kitchen, his hands moving with clinical precision. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't conflicted. He was calm. For the past 4 days, he had been researching, reading engineering manuals, gas line schematics, and fail-safe mechanisms. He had walked through the house like a contractor, studying ventilation routes, pilot lights, and ignition triggers. He knew what he was doing. In the nursery upstairs, Kayla was rocking Micah to sleep while Miles dozed in his crib. She had no idea what was unfolding below her feet. At exactly 2:14 a.m., Richard opened the main gas valve beneath the sink. He had disabled the sensor 2 nights prior. The kitchen filled with a hiss that blended with the hum of the refrigerator. He walked upstairs, kissed Kayla on the forehead, and whispered, "You're a good mother." She smiled in her sleep. He walked into his office, sat at his desk, and waited. At 2:39 a.m., the house exploded. The blast shattered windows 2 blocks away. Car alarms screamed into the night. Neighbors stumbled out in their pajamas, staring in horror at the inferno consuming the Morrow home. Flames reached 30 feet into the sky. The front wall was gone. The second floor collapsed inward. By the time firefighters arrived, it was already too late. Kayla, Richard, Micah, Miles, all gone. At first, the authorities suspected a gas leak, a tragic accident. But Detective Sarah Lennox thought otherwise. Something about the scene didn't sit right. The clean separation of the blast, the evidence of tampering, the precision. It wasn't an accident. It was a decision. One made by a man who couldn't face the truth, and chose instead to erase it. By sunrise, what remained of the Morrow home was a blackened shell. Smoke still curled from the foundation as firefighters sifted through rubble. Detective Sarah Lennox stood at the edge of the driveway, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. The blast pattern was too focused, the origin point too calculated, and the gas valve? Disabled. Not faulty. Manually removed from the system's safety circuit. She requested a full forensic audit. 2 days later, the fire marshal confirmed what she suspected. The explosion had been engineered. Then came the tip. An anonymous voicemail left on the Eastwood Correctional Facility line. A man's voice, shaken, distorted by poor signal. "Ask Dr. Keene. He knows about the test, about Richard." Keene was brought in for questioning. Under pressure, he admitted the truth. Yes, Richard had come to him. Yes, he had submitted the twins' DNA for private testing. And yes, he had covered up Richard's infertility for years. Falsified reports, suppressed records. Why? Detective Lennox asked. Keene's answer was simple: loyalty. "I thought I was protecting him. But what he'd really done was help bury a truth so dangerous." It exploded. The story broke citywide. News vans lined Rosemont Drive. Former co-workers, neighbors, even church leaders gave statements. There were memorials, vigils, but there were also whispers. How could no one have known? Why didn't anyone say anything? A year later, the state launched a full review of internal operations at Eastwood Correctional. Security footage was combed. Inmate logs rechecked. Policy gaps closed. Keene's medical license was suspended indefinitely. The nursery from the hospital, the blue blanket, the photo album of the twins, they were all submitted into evidence. Detective Lennox visited the cemetery on the 1-year anniversary. For names engraved in stone, she left a single flower and whispered, "It should have never come to this, because in the end, it wasn't just fire that took them. It was silence." So now we ask you, how many people do you know living behind quiet smiles and polite silence? How many truths never spoken because fear was stronger than honesty? Richard Morrow didn't kill his family in a fit of rage. He killed them in the stillness of pride. Kayla loved deeply, sought truth desperately, and in the end, paid the price for a life spent waiting for someone else to speak. If you know someone holding on to pain, tell them their silence doesn't have to be permanent. Truth hurts, but lies destroy. Share the story. And remember, some truths only save lives if they're spoken. You've been watching True Crime Vault HQ. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what's hidden in silence often echoes the loudest.